Ready, goes. Ready, box. Ready, up.
Present all!
The U.S.-Africa Summit was met with much expectation as the U.S. and many African nations are expecting to have many deals and agreements coming out of this summit. The Deputy Assistant Secretary for Bureau of African Affairs gives perspective of how enhanced partnerships will lead to growth for both Africa and the U.S.
We're using this opportunity to hear from our African friends what their concerns are, what their hopes are, what their successes have been, and also to deepen and broaden our partnership in a number of different areas. As we're looking to deepen and broaden these partnerships, Africa has a ton of potential. It's leapfrogging on things like 5G and other digital technologies. The strength of the creative industry, particularly in your country, Nigeria, the music, the art, the TV, the design, the fashion, is just something that with our increasing diaspora community and the increasing interest and willingness of people in the United States to experience something that they might not have known before. So what we would like to do is be able to harness the business community to really figure out how we can deepen and broaden this partnership, bring more U.S. investment to African countries like Nigeria, and to bring more, if there are Africans who would wish to invest here in the United States, they are always welcome, and to increase trade so that African businesses can prosper and so that American businesses can also prosper as well.
While the U.S.-Africa Summit was the largest international conference the U.S. has hosted since COVID, and $55 billion were committed to Africa, some are still unsure if the U.S. will be a major partner with Africa.
And I don't want to use a bad word. I don't think they have reached that level of sophistication. And I say sophistication because the number of interest groups, the number of stakeholders that places like France or the UK or even Ukraine, India have in the United States are much more than the stakeholders that are existent for Africa in the United States. So from that perspective, I don't think we've reached that level yet. I don't think we are strategic, but I think that there is such significant progress, especially on things like regional integration, the recognition of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the fact that the African Union is probably going to get a permanent seat at the G20 and might even have space at the Security Council.
The president and many other U.S. officials have committed to being actively engaged in Africa in 2023 through a myriad of visits to the continent to meet with African corporate and government officials. The true outcomes of the summit will have to show evidence in 2023.
And we're collaborating with countries across the continent to expand access to new markets and reduce trade barriers that constrict access to food, including by supporting the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Activities by Russia and China are capable of destabilizing the African continent. Comments from the Secretary of Defense at a forum in Washington, D.C. at the just concluded U.S.-Africa Summit. He believes that developing the right relationships will promote peace and security on the African continent.
So regarding Russia and China, the PRC, we're witnessing the PRC expand its footprint on the continent on a daily basis. And as they do that, they're also expanding their economic influence. The troubling piece there is that they're not always transparent in terms of what they're doing, and that creates problems that will be eventually destabilizing if they're not already. In turning to Russia, we see Russia continuing to peddle cheap weapons. Some of that was mentioned before by one of our senior leaders here. And also, we see Russia employing mercenaries across the continent, and that is destabilizing as well. And so the combination of those activities by those two new countries, I think, that bears watching. And certainly, I think their influence, again, can be destabilizing.
Many countries in Africa have remained neutral because of standing ties with Russia. But as for China, which has made larger investments than the US, the United States say they are natural partners.
So I see it as really something that is rooted in our relationship and the nature of our relationship. I get very animated about this because I feel it very keenly. We are very natural partners. We both think of the importance of opportunity, of innovation, of creativity. We want to go beyond resources to what is the ecosystem that is necessary to make and ensure that our partners can sustain their investments. This is not about us. This is about our partners working together, sharing our values and our priorities. And if you were in the plenary rooms today, you could feel the energy, the buzz, the excitement, but also the insistence on accountability. On yes, we have this natural linkage, but we are going to make sure that we do follow through.
But that was not all. Coming at a time when Africa faces a number of challenges, such as the effects of climate change, food insecurity, the global effects of the coronavirus pandemic, several milestones were also reached.
It is two-way. We have to invest in healthcare workforce, and then we have to invest in retaining the retention of our healthcare workers. And what does that mean? It means we have to pay them. We have to pay them a decent living wage. We have to pay them so that they feel completely empowered to stay in their own countries, because nobody leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. Nobody leaves home unless they feel desperately pushed to do so. So for me, it was also a message around governance, around making sure that African leaders are held accountable for what is going on our continent right now.
So a bit of a political solution.
It has to be. It has to be. It cannot be merely technical. There has to be political solution. We need proper leadership. We need focused leadership. 70% of the health workforce are women. In most of our countries, less than 10% of our parliamentarians and our leaders are women. So if we don't have a voice at the table, how are we expected to be mothers, to be teachers, to be nurses, to be doctors, and to do that and carry that out effectively? That's why I said it is multidimensional. It is not a siloed approach. It is not just about the health workforce. I believe if we train and we empower girls and women, we provide at least 12 years of basic education for every girl child across Africa, Africa will rise again.
The session on partnering for sustainable health and cooperation spots the challenges of investments and resources, strengthening local capacity for Africa, in Africa, for Africa, and the support needed to address health challenges. And one commitment was in the area of safe and effective COVID-19 policies and also mitigating transmission. Today, the United States government announced $250 million in new funding to address COVID-19 in Africa. From the Washington Convention Center, Millicent Walker for Channels Television News.